Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about edge computing. We're taking a look at where edge is here in 2022. Along the way, we're talking about what it means to build distributed applications and execute code at the edge. Some pretty complicated stuff. To discuss that, I'm joined by Lakshmi Sharma, Chief Product Officer at Fastly. Lakshmi, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, James. Looking forward to our conversation today.
You know, I think that edge computing is having a very big year in the year 2022. We've had a lot of headlines about cloud all these years, but it feels like this year is the year the edge is really taking off. As you survey the edge computing market, what are a couple of trends you see driving us forward this year?
Yeah, very excited to be talking about this subject very close to my heart. So the trends that have been evolving over, like, say, 10 plus years. The first trend, I would say, digital transformation, right? As like whether it was retail and banks and say hospitality, like, any industries into that, as all of them start to go from this, in-person, in-store, real-time experience, right? Let's use that word real-time for people getting into the stores, getting into the buildings, like for banks or ATMs. So all of those were like experiences that, thanks to actually retail industry, which started to kind of transform the first because they had the need to do that first, right? So the digital transformation, and there are certain specific industries like e-commerce, retail, and then banks, they're transitioning into this digital experience, right? So, and then making that real time, because if once you go from store to something, omni-channel, the words like omni-channel became really kind of prevalent, if you remember from those days, right? 10 years ago, omni-channel means store experience and digital experience. So the digital transformation was the first trend, and that, I would say, led into a lot of other trends that happened. And around the same time happened cloud, right? The cloud migration. If you want to build a digital experience of the mobile devices and then, omni-channel experiences, or it means basically all kinds of digital endpoint devices, then cloud started to play a role. Oh, we can offer that, right? I can be the point, the central point, which will take away your infrastructure needs and the needs that you don't need to be worrying about, so that you can do business. So the cloud transformation, cloud migration happened. So then the third trend that happened is when you're building these clouds and putting focus on the digital, basically you're putting everything onto internet, right? And then each of these kind of industries, right, retail, e-commerce, and then banking and transportation, they all needed their own experience, personalized experience. And then you don't get a personalized experience by just putting things into centralized cloud, right? You need to bring things to the edge, to the retail edge, to the e-commerce edge, to the bank edge, to the, any edge that you call transportation edge. So you need to bring it. That means that you need developers or the code that can be personalized to those needs, right? So the personalized edge needs developers. So then that's the third trend, is like the developers kind of, and the developments, and then people who are operationalizing that is DevOps, right? So the number one, digital transformation, second is the cloud migration, and then third is the one, in order to accelerate and support those two, was the, the software becoming a key leader into that transformation. Then the fourth one is, in order to operationalize that gigantic personalized edges at each of those industries, you needed things that can, that can roll out services faster, that can operationalize things faster. But then imagine then the DevOps kind of, trend started. Instead of going from IT ops, legacy IT, to the the fast and agile IT, which is DevOps. And then now the security teams are coming and say, oh, CISO teams will come say, oh, no, you're going too fast for my policies, right? And then still slow. So they were becoming kind of blocker into the DevOps that they needed. And then they say, okay, let's just kind of, but then what happened? Then the number of vulnerabilities that were coming from code grew more. Then CISOs had to become a part of the day-to-day thing. They're like, hey, this phenomena called DevSecOps happened, right? So then the fourth trend is like DevSecOps, right? So the four things, starting from digital transformation, number two is cloud migration, and then third is like the software enabling everything, edge, personalized edge, programmable edge, and then the DevSecOps actually making and putting all of that into the business and the operations and trying to match the previous world. Does it make sense? So what are you thought? What have you seen?
Well, I mean, I think it's almost like the edge and cloud are sort of working together in many ways. Sometimes I think they're slightly in competition. I think there's one really interesting point you said that I want to zone in on, and that is the idea of the personalized edge.
Mhm.
What exactly do you mean by the personalized edge? Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah. So personalized, like, when I say I'm talking from the enterprise experience, right? Let's say I'm a retailer, right? Or I'm a bank. So if I need to kind of, I'm a bank, which is a global bank, right?
Mhm.
So my requirements for a branch in, say, US would be different from, there would be certain components which are common, but there are my user profile, the experience that I need to deliver digitally to users in the, say, US, or even within same different parts of US, Midwest user versus, like, West user or East user.
Mhm.
So you're
Right.
talking about the digital experience that you deliver to different users would be different. The speed that you need to deliver, the workflow that you need to have, the data governance and the data kind of, rules that you have, all of them need to be catered to the first number one industry that you're in. So if I'm retail, e-commerce, or or software technology company versus a bank or a healthcare, your
Mhm.
requirements of delivering, how you deliver the digital experience are different. So that's what I meant by, like, the speed is different, the governance is different, the workflows are different. And also, if you're global company, then you want to be giving, like, very specialized experience to the users with one country versus one language and different. That's what I meant: the industry experience, the
Right.
location experience, and then the governance experience.
That makes perfect sense. So let's talk about challenges. I mean, I know there are plenty of challenges involved with Edge. Let's look at the challenges involved with building distributed applications at the edge. I mean, any advice you would give companies?
Yeah, and I would like your input too. This is kind of, you have heard and you have been talking to a lot of people.
Mhm.
So the what we see, right? So, and having been in a cloud company before, right, and having talked to customers,
Mhm.
so the trend that is happening is that from a personalization perspective, going back to my personalized edge kind of notion. So when you want to deliver something for a particular location or a particular region, if you, as a developer, I don't want to be worried about, like, where is my region, where is my zone, what kind of VM do I need, what kind of, because my focus should be on the logic, business logic, right?
Right.
Truly kind of, because, and plus I'm going to be on internet, right? I'm putting this application for internet, public internet. So then, if I have to, so there are two things I want to avoid. One is, if I'm on internet, I don't want to be figuring out what is my, the am I going to be attacked by bot? What are the signals that I'm going to get? What kind of
Sure.
expressions do I
Those
write,
are
right?
distractions. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So as an application developer, do I need to become the full stack security developer? And then second is that, do I need to become the full stack infrastructure developer by figuring out what regions, what compute, what storage?
Hmm.
That's a challenge, because then it delays my, right, from an infrastructure perspective. If I need to worry about all of them, like, I need to understand, become an infrastructure, like, distinguished engineer maybe to write that application.
Hmm.
So that delays, like, the speed. That is, so the challenges are innovation versus speed, and where do you deploy that speed? Because as I talked about the location and the global kind of, where are you deploying the experience,
Hmm.
personalized experience are different from location for users. Second is that on the security side, right, you're worried all the time being on internet that, how do I keep my application secure? So if the velocity, the security of requirements for delivering an application for at the edge for your industry, for your personal industry, require a lot more knowledge. If we don't really make it easy for developers to kind of
Hmm.
abstract those information away and just
Right.
give those tools as part of the application stack. Does it make sense?
It really does. And I think the other issue that I think about on the edge is the concept of where the numbers are getting crunched, where the data analytics is happening, and that these applications at the edge create a certain amount of, and actually an ocean of data. And how do we handle that data? Do we crunch it there at the endpoint? Do we move it back to the headquarters to crunch it? And it seems like as time goes on, more and more of that data is getting handled at the endpoint instead of needing to go back to headquarters to get processed. You
That
see
is
it that way?
fantastic. That is fantastic point. Like, when you talk about these, say, reuse cases, like, say, in automotive, right? So you're talking about autonomous cars. You're not going to kind of continue to process those billions of devices in a car itself, right? Or maybe hundreds of thousands of devices. You
Right.
don't have any time. This is the real time life you're talking about, right? At the edge. I agree with you. So how do you make that decision, and in real time for the data that you're collecting at edge, what do you process? How much of processing power do you need? And then how much of that you kind of take away for your, let's say, historic information or auditing purpose? This actually, this is a critical need for, so that's where the data is, and real-time view into the data. I come back to real-time all the time because these applications, as you said, like, so more and more data is coming, like happening all the time, right? So the data processing is important. And also when you talk about data, there is also that, that point about how much can I have access to the data? If I am the one kind of providing the edge, then access and, and policies for who can access what amount of data, what do you keep at the edge? Are you allowed to keep something else, like, which goes back to the governance question too. I think there is a huge direction. I would say there is a huge market, first of all, of how do we kind of deal with that, but also certain challenges that we need to be kind of focused on in what data to kind of keep, what data to send, and what data goes back to the customer itself, because we don't have access to the data, and we should not have access to the personal data.
And what about the idea of machine learning and artificial intelligence at the edge, and the algorithms learn more and more? To a certain extent, they're operating independently on those endpoints. Sometimes I think we're creating this world where there's this extreme network. It's out there. In many ways, it's operating by itself as the AI and the ML operate by itself. So I'm not sure what my question is. I just think it's fascinating that we put more machine learning at the edge, and the machine learning gets more and more independent. So it's almost running itself out there in those endpoints.
Yes.
Does it make any sense at all, or am I making that up?
No, you are not making it up. And I know that sometimes folks think that I've heard from some people, AI/ML, everyone has to just talk about it. But that's a reality. Like, when people talk about like metaverse or the AI/ML, that's real. That happens in life, like, every day. We can really automate things at edge, so that, and again, everything is going back to like helping people, right? We have businesses so that you help people. And in order to help people, if you can take away those routine tasks, right? If you can take away that information that is not really helping them add value to their life or add more value to a business, right? So then that's where AI and ML can, to be honest, really help fast, kind of automate things that you don't really. But then if you have to keep writing automation yourself versus, and imagining the data point that you talked about, if we keep automating kind of, if an engineering is automating every day, oh, I have this petabyte of data, then let me analyze, automate, then automate more. Instead, you can really use ML, right? ML to kind of start collecting and putting the automation, self-automating. That's what really ML is about. And then you can start to find trends on that data, which is coming right at the edge, in order to deliver value in real time, right? So the edge is helping personalize real-time experiences. So AI ML becomes very important to take away the task that you don't want to. And plus, like, edge is not centralized data center. You won't have like infinite compute there. You won't have infinite data there. So if you don't really start to kind of take away things, in an automated manner through ML sooner, and dump certain, not dump, maybe send certain things in the centralized place and decide that sooner, that what is most important to be sent back to the end user, in, then each of those edges will become the gigantic data center. So that's where AI and ML, and with tying that to the, the question that you had asked about data, I think that becomes really important.
Well, that's
How are you thinking about it?
Well, I think it's really, the interesting thing, I think, is that those sensors at the edge, I think, are still, in terms of being able to handle data and crunch data, are still relatively primitive by comparison to the data crunching processes back at the headquarters. But I think as the years go on, and not that far in the future, the compute power at the edge is going to get greater and greater and greater. So it's like the edge is really, it's going to be powering our world.
What do you think about like TPUs, GPUs? Like, where do you think they will sit in this story?
Well, this is a good question. I mean, I think the way the GPU has, I think, so revolutionized enterprise IT, and then we look to the GPU in terms of really driving artificial intelligence forward.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what I see, GPUs on the edge. Are GPUs living out there in the edge now?
No, I would not. I would not want that. That's like too much of.
Right.
Then we're talking about too much of compute happening at the
We're
edge. So I would
we're
think.
not ready for that. Yeah.
I don't think GPUs, but like I would see that there are like smaller form factors with TPUs that we have seen, like and which industry has talked about. I think that could be a potential, and that's where like because they're also optimized for ML and data models. So I think that
Hmm.
can be a place, and
Right.
we have seen industry kind of using them, but not so much GPUs at the edge. Yeah.
Do you think there will come a time though when a GPU is at the edge?
Mm, I think that will be too much of space, power, and then that would not fit into the current designs of the POPs and then mini POPs and mini data centers that we have. I think that will then make it a centralized data center. At least looking at the current form factors of the power and the power that these units are taking. So until
Right.
that is kind of changed, but that may really means that it is really optimized to do something. And TPU seem like that version of that optimal version of the GPUs to me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Fastly itself. I mean, how is Fastly addressing the CDN and the edge computing needs of its clients? What's the Fastly advantage?
Yeah, fastly, as I've been saying, that the trends that we talk about, right? The trends of digital transformation, putting software programmable edge, and immersive real-time experiences. Fastly has been leading this, transformation or being leader into this programmable edge, real-time immersion applications through its lowest latency platform.
Hmm.
So we have been always like a developers first company. We have always focused on how do you reduce latency. And when I say latency, latency means a couple of things to me.
Hmm.
Latency is that when you configure something, like latency is the time to process. That's how I see. And while if I was a network engineer many years ago, I would think of latency as like how much time does it take for a packet to go from bit to go from one to another, right? But
Right.
then in the newer word, like latency to me is that how much time do you take to push a configuration down? How much time do you take for an application to come up? How much time
Mhm.
do you take for something to roll out, right?
Hmm.
So at Fastly's programmable edge, that's where this company was founded on that. And
Mhm.
edge platform or compute edge platform has always been developers first. And
Hmm.
then we have kept our value around reducing the latency, the amount of time it takes. The first use case had been like CDN. So the way to
Hmm.
think about is that we have been building an edge experience platform built for
Hmm.
developers from day zero. Our use cases had been CDN, caching, being the
Mhm.
best purging algorithm so that you get the best cache hit ratio for any kind of object, static object, dynamic objects. So we kept building and keep making it so that and then we added more use cases. We are like WAF at, our customers were building like WAF, our customers were building like, image optimization. So we think of this as that a company that kept building like a marketplace of the services that we found our customers doing because our customers started to be developers and DevOps and those people. And then we
Mhm.
acquired Signal Science, which is a signal based like security company. We also
Mhm.
integrated that back into the edge, right? So then the same people like, who had challenges about, I talked about like the CISOs had these challenges like, how do I stay on speed with my DevOps folks? So we
Mhm.
started to also go out to and then work with those people like in the DevSecOps. So we were seen as a CDN company, but but we were actually always had been a programmable edge company, which was built in the foundation of delivering everything fast, whether it is config fast, deploy fast, roll out fast, and policy
Right.
fast.
Right.
So we, I think so. The whole, the programmable edge, personalized experience at edge, we have been doing pretty well. And CDN gave us that stepping stone because that's where the area where we proved our value the first, and then we continue to add on to that.
So is the Fastly network, is it built on or does it interoperate with the major cloud vendors? How does it work in that world?
We we think of this like we kind of are complementary to cloud, because
Yeah.
cloud started kind of, central journey. And then you would see almost all the cloud providers are going towards the edge, but we started from edge, right? So we are
Right.
complementary. And then the way the techniques that we use, for example, we use like WASM, which is WebAssembly way of putting the modules together or services together, service chaining at edge. And those are like web requests. We are talking literally services. So we had always been web service first at the edge, while cloud providers were coming from IaaS and PaaS and then
Right.
containers, right? So
Right.
it's kind of a very good mix or complementary. So we application service first at edge, while cloud providers started from the cloud centralized model first. We are literally locationless service anywhere, anytime. And then clouds are like, okay, start from centralized service, build a Kubernetes cluster or build a service mesh. So we are a very good complementary. We can actually have any platform running on us. So we can be an integrator into anything, I would say.
Okay. Well, given how close you are to the market, I'd love to get a sense of what you think about the future of edge computing. What are some key milestones you think you see looking ahead?
And I would like your opinion too, because you talk to a lot of people. So I can give you mine.
Please, I'll trade you. So what is your future of what's the future of edge as you see it?
So the edge is just happening. I would pick some numbers like I picked up from Gartner. So Gartner number says that enterprises had like 5% of enterprise workloads were close to in 2019 were moving to edge.
Do you say it's 5%?
5% in 2019.
Small.
And
okay.
it will be 40% in 2024.
Wow. Okay.
It's like massive, right?
Yeah.
If you look at like that transformation of the compute workload that are there, but then as we talked about like earlier, then certain industry kind of went into that sooner, like e-commerce and technology companies. Others are still exploring the potential, and like say financial, right, and other companies. So it's really kind of what I'm getting to is that it's really use case driven. Edge is opening opportunities that people couldn't imagine before, right? So it's like going back to the data point that you mentioned, data governance at the edge, and then like keeping like making decisions which are like real-time telemetry, real-time visibility. Real-time did not happen with cloud and other technologies. They were like lag. If you needed information, you would get samples, not full information, right? If you needed visibility, you will get like 5 seconds or certain interval visibility, not real time. So the true real-time personalized happen at the edge, right? And then there are technologies now like WASM I talked about, where you can get full isolation of one customer from another, one organization to another, right at the edge. And then you can really do things like update and maintenance, everything like, in your own isolated environment, which is not possible with other technologies. So the technologies have evolved, right? Technologies have evolved. And that's why it is opening up newer use cases. So that's where I see that it is just started. And like, even if you look at the numbers that I just talked about and the technologies that I talked about, like WASM, like, being able to do web logic and then web assembly, not necessarily web logic, that's another term, but web assembly, instead of kind of doing bottoms up infrastructure, location aware to locationless logic. So technologies are there, software has evolved, and newer use cases are just coming. And that will kind of create, and newer industries are adopting it, as I said, like from retail, media and gaming. That was a kind of our first one, media, gaming to retail to e-commerce to now financial and other companies. So I think it just started.
Yeah, I totally agree that edge has a very bright future, and I don't think people even realize the extent to which edge is going to grow and play a big role in our life. I think it's still sort of an underdog in terms of its profile. I think one of the issues involved is artificial intelligence and data, because with AI you've got the algorithm, and that's really powerful. But the reality is that algorithm doesn't do much without an ocean of data flowing into that algorithm. You need to get a lot of the data to really make that algorithm powerful. So the question is, how do we get that level of data to those edge and endpoints? And I think when we solve those kind of problems with network flow, it's going to become ever more powerful.
That's 100% right. Data requires a powerful network, right? And data requires like once we have figured out all the data tagging and data isolation, and then, the data level problems, what data required comes with it. But then you need this infrastructure and the network to actually deal with that, how much, and then there would always be this kind of, the return on of investment, and like the point that return of investment on the edge. What we have to keep making those decisions, and what is the size of the edge, right? And how close and personalized do you want it to be? So if you want more and more personalized, then it needs to stay nimble. It needs to stay small form factor wise too, so that going back to the cost and all those kind of agility and the cost and everything that comes with the size and the location, that needs to stay, that's very important. And then that's why, like, and coming back to your AI ML point, if you if I want to build model, if I want to automate more right at the edge, then we need to start to think about where do you also keep these models, right? Because these models also take kind of, they're like configurations. The model needs space, the model needs storage. And then what models do you actually train better to stay at the edge versus what models do you kind of, move to the centralized cloud? I think that's something that we need to continue to work. But I think that would require all these edge cloud providers and all of us to work and build a marketplace, I kind of call it. I've seen that in my previous company, that where people kind of, you test a lot of models across different companies or different customers, I mean, and then you take the most relevant one, most used one, and you make them like, offer them to all the customers as part of your API, right? So driving a data model or an AI model, machine learning model, for your most personalized use cases, delivering that as an API, because most of the customers would use it, and bringing more and more these edge companies into one place and saying that let's keep adding more and more, the AI models or the data models to the edge as an API. And I think that will drive a lot of success.
Lakshmi, I think you said it. It's a lot of fascinating stuff. It's going to be a super interesting sector to follow in the years ahead. And I greatly appreciate you sharing your insight today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It went again fast. Like every time I talk to you and your session, it just feels like very, very informative.
Which technology itself moves pretty fast, right?
That is true. Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Thank you.